Okay, welcome everybody. Lovely to have you all join us today to this Shape Your Future session, wherever you're joining from. This is an event that is brought to you by the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, Science and Engineering, or ATSE for short. This is one of the initiatives that ATSE have developed to encourage and excite students about the importance and the possibilities of a career in STEM. Today's Shape Your Future session on people, planet, prosperity, and how to save the world acknowledges that about 2 weeks ago we had World Environment Day on June the 5th. And World Environment Day is about encouraging awareness and action for protecting our environment. But before I go any further, I actually would like to acknowledge the custodianship of the lands and waters on which we're all joining today. I'm joining this event from Canberra, which is the traditional country of the Ngunnawal people, and I acknowledge their custodianship of the lands and waters, not only on which I do my work, but also that the ATSE staff work on as well. I also acknowledge the many lands and waters around Australia on which ATSE fellows work, live, and apply our science, technology, and engineering. I acknowledge the traditional owners and pay my respects to their elders, and I acknowledge traditional knowledge and the deep history of innovation that it embodies. And I also pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are joining us today. So I'm Helen Clue. I'm a fellow at ATSE, and I'm also an honorary professor at the Australian National University. My career has been as a researcher, a scientist, and a leader in atmospheric and climate science, and I've worked both in the universities in Australia and CSIRO. Now, I'll be leading the session today, and that includes making sure that your questions get answered. But before we listen to our wonderful speakers, just some housekeeping. I'd like to remind everyone that all attendees have agreed to abide by the ATSE Code of Conduct, and we'll be keeping an eye on the content in the Q&A channel. And I remind you all that this session is also being recorded. We'll have our presentations, and then we should have between 15 and 20 minutes left at the second half of this session where we'll have a discussion. And so we really encourage you to use that time to ask your questions and get them answered. You can submit your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll present these to the speakers in the second half. So let me go to our speakers. I'll briefly introduce them. We'll hear today from Dr. Zoe Doubleday. She's a marine ecologist, an ARC Future Fellow at the University of South Australia. She's also an award winner in ATSE, the ATSE ICM Agri-Food Award winner. Then we'll hear from Megan White. Megan is doing her PhD at the University of Queensland. She's joining us from the wonderful Gold Coast. And she's also a recipient of ATSE's Elevate Boosting Women in STEM scholarship. And then we'll hear from Deepak Surendra Malia, and he is a final year PhD student. He's joining us from Geelong. He's at the School of Engineering at Deakin University. He's an ambassador of ATSE's industry mentoring program, whose acronym is IMNIS. So each of our speakers will explore with us and share with us their career journeys in STEM. We've asked them to reflect on the choices along the way, the influences that technology has played on their career pathway, and how collaboration and diversity show up in their day-to-day work. So without any further ado, I shall pass on to Zoe to do our first talk. Thank you, Zoe.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Everyone can see my screen okay? Fantastic. So it's great to be here at Shape Your Future. So we were given a brief to talk about our career and some of the significant turning points and how we ended up where we are today. So I've been in research for nearly 20 years, including my postgraduate studies. So it seemed how I could fit it all in one slide in 5 minutes. So I really had to think about some of the events that have shaped my career. So I start here today with an image of the Great Western Tiers in the remote region of northern Tasmania. So this is where I first grew up. We lived on a mountain called Quamby Bluff. My parents bought 50 acres of temperate rainforest filled with myrtle and sassafras. We were off the grid. We had water from the creek. Dad rigged up a hydroelectric system from the creek running down the mountain. He built our house out of stone and the timber that from the forest around us. So I grew up initially around nature with a very visceral connection with nature. My first memory was learning how to tan a goat skin for one of the goats that we had. And we were literally surrounded by the screams of Tassie devils and nests of tiger snakes and all of that. So I sort of grew up with an innate love of the environment and understanding how that environment works. So when I went to high school, well, I didn't really go to high school. I was homeschooled for all of my high school education. So I had no formal science training. And home education system in Tasmania in the 90s, shall I say, was relaxed. It was legal, but it was relaxed. And I remember my mum saying, we went into Launceston, which was the big city, and she gave me a $50 note and she said, go and buy some books for the year. And I bought a book on the ecology of Australian habitats, and that's where I learned my first science, formal science as it were, about how the environment worked. And then I could go out to the forest and see how it all worked. And then I was basically self-taught, learning, recording the animals and plants and how everything fit together. So when I was sort of finishing my education at school, I did come to a fork in the road. So on one hand, I wanted to be a novelist. So as part of my education, I had a children's author who was a mentor who I'd write stories for, and she'd comment back on my writing. I love words and writing. I still do today. But I also loved nature and everything about it and the science of it. So I made a practical decision that I thought I could never be a good enough writer to pay my future bills. So I chose science at University of Tasmania. I studied botany, zoology, geology, geography. And I loved the university environment. It was sort of similar to homeschooling. It was a lot of self-learning, self-driven, those sorts of things. So why did I choose, eventually now I'm a marine biologist and ecologist. So why did I choose marine biology? I mainly got into marine biology in my postgraduate studies as a PhD student. And I chose it because everything we learned on land, we knew 10 times less of what we knew in the ocean. So I thought that's where my knowledge and expertise could be more used. So it wasn't because we're playing, people might think a marine biologist plays with whales and dolphins. Most of us don't. Or because you love diving or fishing. Tasmania is way too cold for me to go diving. So I still work on boats a lot and work with fishers, which I love. But predominantly I've been on the surface. So that's really what drove me to be a marine biologist. So I moved to South Australia, where I worked as a junior researcher at the University of Adelaide, working with different professors on all sorts of different topics. So it's hugely varied, and I think that's what excites me a lot about STEM, is you never know where your day goes and what you're going to be doing. So a big leap in my career was a few years ago where I got a fellowship which allowed me to set up my own independent research group here now at the University of South Australia. And that's been a rewarding and sometimes challenging, fascinating journey where you can do whatever you like in research. You need to get money for it. You need to convince people that it's important. You get students to help you. I love working with young people every day. And there's so much creativity. And I think I learned a lot about creativity in my homeschool days, even though I still feel sometimes there's gaps in my knowledge. There's always a place for you and what your background is here in STEM. And I think creativity has really helped me with this. And lastly, most recently, more later in life and later in my career, I had a baby. He's now 2 years old. So I took maternity leave, and then I was part-time work for 18 months. And I'm going to full-time work for the first time next month. So this was a huge change in thinking for me. I was so scared that I couldn't research and have my career and have a baby as well, and how it would change how I worked. And it's changed lots of things, but it's been quite a journey, and I've learned so much more about actually learning to work more efficiently and effectively. And this picture here is Felix reading a book, I Want to Be a Scientist. And this was a cartoon book of different scientists in South Australia, and I'm one of those. And now I just showed him the book, and for some reason he does recognise Mama as a cartoon. And it's just as an example of where you end up as a scientist, of being an avatar in an app, and now I'm a cartoon character in a book. So just to finish off here, if you'd like to know more about what I do, here's my contact details. This picture here in the background of Cuttlebones sort of sums it up. I work a lot on cephalopods, so that's octopus, cuttlefish, and squid. I work on sustainable fisheries and seafood. So seafood's becoming increasingly important around the world as a source of protein and micronutrients. There's a lot more we can do to make seafood more sustainable. It is a fascinating area because it's an area where we still use wild populations as a source of food as opposed to farms. I work with geoscientists using high-tech instrumentation to look at the chemistry within bones and shells of marine animals like these cuttlebones. And this enables us to track where seafood comes from, track where animals come from, track past environmental change, all sorts of things. And finally, what I'm passionate about is science communication. I do research on it and I do a lot of it myself, and I'm passionate about encouraging more scientists to do more communication, because I think we can do so much more, and the benefits are huge. This is something that's always working on and passionate about. So
thank you. Yeah, thanks, Zari. That's great to hear your story and your journey. And I'm sure we've got some questions for you towards the end. But for now, I'll get you to stop sharing your screen, and we'll invite, thank you, Megan White, to share her screen with us and tell us her story. Megan, over to you.
So I'm just going to share this. Can everyone see?
Yes, that's good. That's great. Thanks.
Okay. So hello, I'm Meg, and today we're going to talk about a few things, beginning with like my weird personal history and the choices it's made up of. So I guess we'll start with where I am right now. I'm a research engineer for a local renewables company called Alexis Energy. And we solve problems that pop up when you jam renewable energy systems and conventional energy systems together. And we do that by building gadgets and writing software. And my job is to research the ways that we can solve those sorts of problems with artificial intelligence, and then to build the intelligent gadgets that will do it. So I do this research at the University of Queensland as a PhD student and an Elevate scholar. And I guess the question is, what kind of choices led me to this role? Well, first I chose to be a journalist, and then I chose to be an editor, and then an ethical hacker, and then a machine learning researcher, and then a CEO. Not to mention a paint seller at a hardware store, a shelf stacker at Woolies, and even for almost 2 weeks, a traffic controller. So this probably sounds like 1,000 different choices that have very little to do with one another. But the truth is, I loved each of these jobs with my whole heart, and I thought I was going to do them forever until I didn't. And that's the characteristic choice that I made over and over again. It was realizing that I was bored or dissatisfied and making the choice to course correct whenever I got new information about what I found thrilling. So the process that has led me to STEM and through STEM is this. I set a goal based on what I know right now, and I pursue that goal until I achieve it. And along the way, I discover new wonders in the world that kind of tickle my brain. And once the final box is ticked on my original goal, I set a new goal based on all that new information I just got. So after following all these threads and pursuing my dreams and my new dreams and my new dreams, I've arrived here. And I have a job now that feels like the logical conclusion to a trajectory that probably looked a lot like abject chaos to any spectators. And I know this is a STEM specific talk and I can answer specific questions about my job. But I guess what I wanted to say here was, please take this sense of freedom with you. The key to making the right choice at school and at work and in life, I think, is to just follow your curiosity and make grand, ambitious plans for yourself that are steeped in that curiosity. And then be willing to throw it all away and change course if you feel the call of a new horizon. So that's choices. And I want to talk about how technology has sort of played into that and influenced my career pathway. So I think the one factor that has had like an outsized impact on my career changes is the feeling that there's about to be some sort of huge leap forward in what's possible technically. When I feel that, and when someone offers me the opportunity to be right there at the coalface in the moment of the leap, I absolutely fall in love, and it happens every time. So here are some specific examples of pathways. When I was a hacker, I was working with this guy who had a machine learning company. And he was telling me that deep learning, which is a kind of artificial intelligence, was exploding everywhere, but we had no one in Australia who was really across it. So there are all these amazing academic papers coming out of MIT and Stanford. And he was like, we could bring this here, we could build this here, we could shape this in Australia. I just need people who are willing to learn. And so I taught myself how to do machine learning and went on this wild, incredible journey with him for a few years. And then my now boss lured me into renewables by saying, hey, solar power is cheap as chips. Batteries are getting cheaper every day. The economics mean that the renewable energy revolution is going to happen in your lifetime. And because you're an engineer, you get to design it. And like from that point on, I was gone. I've never turned back. So I would say for me, technology, as well as like making up my core tool set, it's also the carrot at the end of the stick. It's sort of part of the fundamental appeal and the promise and a huge component of why engineering and technology is fascinating to me. It's that changing element. And just quickly, finally, I know we wanted to touch on everyday diversity and collaboration. And it's a pretty meaty topic for me to have left until the last minute. But I guess the point I want to make about it is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I cannot do my job without diverse collaborators. And so I simply refuse to work anywhere that they're not present. Anyone listening, please trust me when I say it is exhausting trying to compensate for the lack of diverse collaborators. Because, well, to take a harder line on it, anyone who says diversity isn't the most pragmatic and efficient avenue to discovering novel solutions or delivering positive outcomes at work generally, they're either deluded or they're just not grappling with big enough problems. Because when you are in the middle of it, this is one of those self-evident truths you hear about. Diversity is not just an ethical issue. It's not just something we have to improve simply as a matter of principle. It's not just about what's right. Having been the lone outsider in many homogenous groups and having watched these groups grind to a halt without my intervention when their common viewpoints and common communication processes failed them, I promise you that diversity is a matter of pragmatism. It's about what's critical. It's about the requirements of the task. And so I put it to you that most people can learn to do most jobs pretty quickly, but it takes a lifetime to learn how to have someone else's insights. So on the occasions where I am a lone outsider, I try to take notice of anything I feel self-conscious about. I think what makes me feel different, and then I ask, what does this difference mean I can bring to the table? Am I the only girl here? Am I the only person over 25 here? Am I the only journalist here? And then I'm like, okay, suddenly I've cornered the market on a lot of solutions that are going to come up at this table. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm hitting my time limit now, but I just guess finally I'd want to encourage you all to start noticing the practical value that your diversity and someone else's diversity brings to any situation, STEM or otherwise. Because as you do, it becomes quite edifying, and it takes away a lot of the concerns that I've heard people have about venturing into places like STEM. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything from me, jammed as quickly as I can.
Thanks, Meg. That was really, I think, actually quite inspiring.
Oh.
So good to hear about so many of your wise words there. We'll pick up on it in the discussion. So for now, I'll ask you to stop sharing your screen. Thank you. And we'll now go to Deepak and hear from him. Deepak, you can start sharing. There you go. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you to ATSE for giving us this wonderful opportunity to share our research and our journey in STEM. I'm joining here from Deakin University in Geelong, and I thought of just taking through like a timeline of my career in STEM. So I was born in a city called Chennai. So that's from the southern part of India, from a state called Tamil Nadu. And the city is quite famous for its architectural marvels and like ancient Indian temples, and then mouth-watering and delicious food, and also the vibrant culture incorporating various art forms like music, dance, and like paintings. I did all my schooling in Chennai, and I was always very curious. As Megan was saying, curiosity is very important for life, not just for like pursuing career in STEM or anything. Like in general, I was very much curious around the things around me, and then this naturally like attracted me towards my interest in science. And I was very good in my studies, and besides my studies, I just enjoyed participating in a lot of extracurricular activities like sports, music, and dance. I was there everywhere in our school, and I also was in like several leadership roles in my school. And I love working with diverse range of peoples, and also work on like collaborative projects. So the other thing that I want to mention since my childhood is my fascination about water. Water is necessary for sustaining our life in this planet. With the increasing problems these days due to the water scarcity, global warming, and then the pollution, and also there's a global population boom currently, making the demand of fresh drinking water the highest. And that motivated me to work, and wanted me to work on water treatment. And that's how I pursued my chemical engineering. So I did my chemical engineering back in Shastra University. That's again from Tamil Nadu, a southern state in India. And it's one of the institute that's highly reputed for its research in science and biotechnology. I just fell in love with the courses, and I enjoyed it so much. And since during bachelor's, I was introduced to research in laboratories on nanomaterials and then water treatment. And then I was selected for one prestigious program from Deakin University, where I got an opportunity to come here during my bachelor's for a study abroad research internship. So that was when I was introduced to like synthesis of membranes, and then water treatment, how membrane filtration could be the future for drinking water. So in a nutshell, membrane is like a semi-permeable layer through which you pressurize water, the polluted water, and you have like the pure water coming through the other side and the pollutants retained on the other side. So this is crucial technology because of the issues happening these days in terms of water scarcity, and the emerging technology of desalination and water recycling, where this membrane plays a very important role. And that's when I also was fascinated with the facilities here in Australian universities. We have cutting edge nanomaterial and characterization, and then water testing facilities. So I was like, okay, I would want to pursue a career in research. And I applied for multiple PhD opportunities, research opportunities here in Australia. And I was lucky enough to get a position here in my same team. I did my internship at Deakin. And I am currently finishing up my PhD and I'm submitting my thesis by end of this month. So that was a wonderful learning experience for me through my research journey during my PhD. And my PhD focus, I focused on developing and engineering these membrane materials that I mentioned before for effective water treatment. And then the membranes that we prepared here, we were able to remove harmful contaminants and while having higher energy efficiency and cost effectiveness when compared to commercial membranes. So I'm looking forward to translate this lab-based testing into actual industrial application, and then work on collaborative research projects. So in terms of this, the research career I had, I just loved the excitement and the curiosity that brings in myself. Every day, there's some or the other new challenge that you have to work on. It is definitely a bit of struggle, but at the end of the day, that's how life works. So there would be a bit of struggle, and you learn how to overcome it or have how to have innovative solution, and then we move towards the next phase. And besides my research here at Deakin, I also do casual lecturing. So I love working with students, and I teach them units on like environmental engineering and civil engineering. And also I am part of outreach activities from Deakin, where we go to higher secondary schools, and then we run workshops on like problem solving and then curiosity, and also engineering skills, and what are the various career pathways they could have based on the education they choose. And I also part of various student support initiatives here. And in terms of from Geelong, I'm one of the Study Geelong student ambassador, and also I'm an ambassador with IMNIS Catalyst. And we work on developing various professional skills development for school and then university students. So in terms of the technological the technology that has played a major role in my research is the access we have to the cutting edge nanomaterial synthesis and then characterization methods. So that helped me actually evolve the material science part of my research and work towards bringing in innovative technologies. And through my research journey, I've also been fascinated about talking about my research. So I've been awarded few awards for my like oral presentations, and I have presented my research in national and international conferences. And one other key aspect of the research is collaboration. As Megan was mentioning, it's you never know what the other person is going to bring to the team. So I'm always curious and I'm always open-minded, and I try to listen. And then I have been lucky enough to have lovely collaborators, like national collaborators and also international collaborators from various universities across the world to work on this pressing water treatment challenge. So for my next part of my career journey, I'm looking forward to work on addressing the Sustainable Development Goal 6, that's having access to clean water and sanitation for all. Now, currently, I'm working on putting through applications for grants for like industry university collaboration, and then want to work towards solving these emerging problems in water treatment.
Thank you so much, Deepak. We've already got some questions, so if I can get you to stop sharing your screen, and I will thank you all at the end. I want to get straight to the questions, and then we'll come to some summing up from me. So we'll just start at the top. I think this one's for you, Megan. How different is it to be a journalist and a scientist? Great question.
I find that science just adds a few steps. I have been very excited to see just how transferable my journalism skills have been to science, because really science is about inquiry and finding truth and proving that you found the truth, and then sharing the truth with others so that they can check the truth is true. And so I think The day-to-day is a little bit different. You know, as a journalist, you sit down in one place and you write a lot and you talk on the phone a lot. At least you did when I was a journalist. And as a scientist, you kind of in whatever you're doing, you run experiments, you run simulations, you read a lot of stuff to find out what other people have done experiments on and what they found in their simulations. And you're always trying to like take these specific facts and pull them out a bit so you can understand a bigger fact or a bigger truth. And so there are lots of similarities in that sorting and searching and interpreting part of the process. And the differences really come in the sources of those truths and facts and ideas. So rather than calling a person on the phone, I read their life's work. Yeah, so I think there are lots of similarities and there are lots of differences, and it really depends on, you know, if you're trying to decide between two paths or a fork in the road, you kind of think about the processes that you'd like to spend your days undertaking. Would you rather spend your time in a conversation, or you know extracting cultural truths, or would you rather spend your time running your own tests and doing your own experiments? And that's kind of where things diverge, and then they probably diverge further and further from there, but that's where I would start.
Thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Zoe now. She might want to comment on this because I know she's worked closely with media, but there's also a question for you, Zoe. So it gives me a good chance to segue to that question, which is, why is marine biology or sustainable fishing important? Oh, you're muted, Zoe.
Well, the oceans cover something like 70% of our planet, and that's just the surface. We've also got the depths in there. They're just the factories of the planet in terms of all the carbon that's in there, the ecosystem services that they provide for us on land is like, it's hard to even fathom what, you know, the oceans do for us. And one of those resources is food. And sometimes as a marine biologist, you know, it might be counter to fisheries because you think, oh, you're harvesting animals to eat. How does that work? Well, part of sourcing food from the wild is it can be a very low, can have a low carbon footprint because we're not farming them. We've also got to watch out for how we manage fisheries. But seafood is a really high quality source of protein and micronutrients. And there's research showing now that, particularly in coastal populations, that small amounts of seafood can go a long way to prevent malnutrition. And as you know, there's more pressure on land, arable land and fresh water. There's more research getting into aquaculture technologies and supporting sustainable fisheries as another food source to really help feed our growing population.
Thanks, Zoe. So we now got a question for you, Deepak, which is an important one. Can we filter and purify seawater as well?
Yes, there are desalination, that is what this is called, like removing salt out of the seawater. So membrane is like one of the most efficient treatment methods to remove the salt from like the seawater, and then we produce like drinkable quality water through this process. But there are few issues associated with it as well. So in terms of desalination, yes, we're able to achieve the highest quality of drinking water through membrane filtration. But I'm sure like Zoe would also have some thoughts about this, because we have like 3 liters of water that's generated with very high content of salt compared to 1 liter of actual like purified water that's produced. So that's called the saline wastewater that's generated from these reverse osmosis treatment plants. So until previously, there had been like just straight away discharging these retentate, that's the water with very high salt content, back into the sea. And there's been studies that this actually impacts the ecological life there around in the ocean. So now they're trying to work on actually recovering the salt. So there's a concept called zero liquid discharge. So anything that comes into that treatment plant has to become a product and not to be sent back as a waste. So they use like evaporative technologies, or there's another method called forward osmosis and membrane distillation, where they have incorporated few new methods to recover these salts and again recover the water as well from it. So yes, desalination can be achieved through membrane filtration, but there is also a lot of research that needs to be continued on using this the high salinity wastewater that is generated.
Yes, and it is a hot topic here in South Australia as a very arid state with limited fresh water. And all our marine waters, a lot of them are hypersaline naturally as well. So when you get these desal plants come in, pumping out hot brine, it does and can have an impact. So it's great to hear this, this work that you're working on.
Thank you.
And it raises another point, which I won't dwell on, but just to say that we've talked a little bit about collaboration and diversity, and I was really interested to hear what you each had to say. But this is an example about the environment that we're in is so connected that solutions, as important as they are, it's so helpful if you can be part of a team or a broader network that is looking at other things that can to ensure that we're thinking about unintended consequences. So this is kind of a nice example there and then. But I've got another question here, and I'm not sure who'd like to answer it because it's relevant to you all. And that is it required to relocate to be a researcher? So maybe it is, I think we've got time. Sorry, just let me check. If you all wanted to, there's one more question, but if you all wanted to quickly have a reflection on that question. So is it required to relocate to be a researcher? And Meg, I'll start with you. And then I'll go to Zoe and then Deepak.
I think it can be, and it also doesn't have to be. So I think if you're willing to relocate, you probably have a lot more opportunities, but I think there are definitely opportunities where you don't have to relocate. And it kind of depends on what you're working on, where the sort of intellectual centers for it are, and whether you like literally need to be on an iceberg to do your work, or whether you, like me, can sort of do it anywhere. And it's more about what your partners require. So I know that's kind of a bad answer, yes and no, but I think the answer is yes and no.
And
yeah,
I think that's with me. I think years ago, there was always this sort of drive that you had to move around the world to succeed in research. And I think it is changing and recognising accessibility to research. Not everyone can do it, and particularly it becomes more challenging when you have family or people you need to care for. And I know very successful researchers who have never moved, have never moved from Tasmania, and Tasmania can be seen as a regional area that's quite isolated, and they're very successful international researchers. I know people that have lived in multiple countries. They might move every couple of years, and then they, find that that's exhausting by the end and they want to settle down. So I think obviously if you move, there's just more job opportunities there. I think you can also create own opportunities in research. And I think COVID has changed things in terms of more flexible workspace, working more remotely and virtually, like we're doing now. Maybe this might not have happened, this virtual forum now prior to COVID. So I think there's a silver lining there, and being much more connected and being more, everything's more accessible for people that might not be able to move around.
Yeah, I think good points there, Zoe. Deepak, what's your view?
In terms of, as both of them are mentioning, so in terms of the research expertise or the field that we want to explore, so there are a lot of universities and labs like in various parts of the world who are like doing really well in it. They have the required facilities for it, and then also have like the funding and other opportunities. So being open to opportunities throughout the world, if you are, if there's not an issue with like their family and then the support, and I would suggest people to explore it. Like you would have like a new life starting there, and then also you would have a lot of new learning experiences through that.
Yeah, great point, actually. If you do have the ability to take up the new opportunity, it's such a learning experience. I know that myself. But I think, Zoe, your point that post-COVID, people have become a lot more accepting of flexible work practices. I think that's going to change things. The other thing I'd say is that your career is long, hopefully, and there are different phases in it. There are phases where you might be open to going around the world, and there are phases where you actually need to stay in one place, but that's okay, because you can explore each of those sequentially, perhaps, in your career.
And I still have a goal to, I've travelled a lot for work, but I've always had my primary employment in Australia, and it is still a goal to work overseas for like a year to gain that experience and immerse yourself in another country. So that is still, even at my career stage, is a career goal for me.
Yeah. So we haven't got long. Oh, sorry, Deepak, you go.
Yeah, no, with the advances of technology, I'm sure all the researchers here would have collaborators in various other countries, and they're part of research that's happening like simultaneously. So yeah, I just thought I'll add on, like, once you've crossed through a part of your like career journey, I think you can collaborate from wherever you are. So when you have that leverage to move out of your place and then go to a new country or new city and start your life there, I think you can definitely take a chance.
Yes, and indeed those international collaborations, or national for that matter, but outside where you're living, is one of the most exciting parts, I think, of our career. Look, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and we've got two really good questions, and I'm trying to decide which to go first. I'm going to start with the last one in case it's the only one. How do we save the planet? By switching to renewable energy and sustainable development. I'm going to give each of you just very short. So here's a media test for you. In 30 seconds or something. Can you give us a soundbite on saving the planet by switching to renewable energy and sustainable development? Yes. Sorry. Yes. Let's start with Meg.
I think for my money, you electrify everything and you use all of the resources available to us, like the sun and the water. And once you start to do that at scale, all of the processes involved in doing that at scale become cheaper. And then it becomes this virtuous cycle and everything becomes more possible. You can read a book called The Big Switch if you want to get a pretty good handle on that. And I'm done.
Thank you, Megan. Zoe.
Backing on from what Megan goes, I think a lot of this is about people and people willpower and motivation. And there's so much research now to show that nature connectedness, the more you are connected to nature, the more sense of the environmental stewardship you'll have. And the generations are becoming less connected to nature. So I think it's about the kids and babies and children growing up now, getting them outside and appreciate the environment, and then they might want to help fix it with us too in the future.
Thanks, Zoe. Deepak.
Yes, continuing from Zoe, so the change has to happen from individual person. So the government or the research scientists can bring in laws or like ideas for like renewable energy and then sustainable development. But at the end of the day, the change has to be from the family, from the self. So just like segregating your like green waste and then red and recycling waste adds up a lot in terms of when you see it like integrated towards the population of the planet. It means a lot in making few changes. Saving water, like having efficient systems in your water systems in your home, saving energy. The day-to-day activities actually means a lot in solving this problem. It's not just the researchers or the government to work on this. It's everyone's like part to play in this journey.
Thank you, and those were very wise words. And there is one more question, which maybe while I'm wrapping up, each of you three might want to type an answer, and I don't know if you can do that, but I'm conscious that if I need to probably wrap up today's session. I was really struck by our three speakers who are just all fantastic. You're all working on those things that we do need to save our planet. And so it was really inspiring to hear about the work that you're doing, but for today also your journey and the fact that it's a diverse journey. There is no one path. And I think those are some really important messages, and the message around the importance of collaboration and having the wisdom of the crowd and diverse voices. You know, I've had a very long career and they were very important for me. So thank you all. It was just really interesting. To our audience, just to say to you, thank you for joining us. There are other Shape Your Future sessions planned for this year, so do consider joining us again, so you can hear from other people working in STEM. And we'll be sending you a short feedback survey so after the session, so you can explore some of the ideas from today a bit more. But with that, our time is up, so I'll conclude. Thank ATSE for making this possible. Thank again Zoe, Megan and Deepak for your fantastic presentations and the discussion. And I wish you all a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you so much.